You woke up this morning to headlines that feel less like political news and more like the script of a thriller film. You are seeing reports of a collapse in a federal court, a rush to Walter Reed Medical Center, and a secret ceremony in the West Wing that has fundamentally altered the executive branch of the United States. The images being flashed across your screens are designed to evoke shock and immediate emotional reaction. You see the chaos of the hospital arrival. You hear the breathless reporting about Vice President JD Vance taking the oath of office in the dead of night. You are being told that Donald Trump woke up expecting to review his briefing papers only to be informed by a weeping staffer that he no longer holds the clearance to see them. It is a moment of profound personal and political drama, and the media is feeding you every ounce of that interpersonal conflict. They are focusing on the betrayal and the rage and the accusations of a soft coup coming from the former president's team. But while the cameras are focused on the hospital bed and the weeping staffer, I want you to look somewhere else. I want you to look at the machinery that actually keeps this country running, because the real story here is not about loyalty or betrayal between two men. It is about the systemic transfer of power and what happens to the stability of the global economy when the person holding the nuclear codes and the checkbook of the Treasury changes overnight without an election. We are going to walk through this not as a soap opera, but as a case study in institutional fragility and constitutional mechanics. Most people watching the news today are asking who betrayed whom. I want you to ask what this means for your job security, the value of the dollar in your pocket, and the stability of the institutions that undergird your daily life. When we talk about the 25th Amendment, we often talk about it in abstract legal terms, but today we are seeing it applied in a way that sends shockwaves through the markets that dictate the price of your groceries and the safety of your retirement savings. So let us strip away the sensationalism and look at the cold, hard economic and legal reality of what has just occurred. To understand the gravity of this situation, you have to look beyond the chaotic scene at Walter Reed. Officially, what has happened is the invocation of Section 4 of the 25th Amendment. This is the break glass in case of emergency provision of our Constitution. It allows the Vice President and a majority of the Cabinet to declare that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. This is not a decision taken lightly, or at least it was never designed to be. It is a mechanism created for catastrophic incapacitation, for comas or severe strokes, not necessarily for the murky gray areas of political maneuvering. Yet here we are. We have a situation where the cabinet, the very people appointed by the president to manage the vast bureaucracies of the state, have collectively decided to transfer power to the vice president while the president was fighting for his life. The result is that JD Vance is now the acting president. Note the specific terminology here. He is acting president. This distinction matters immensely to the markets and to foreign creditors holding U.S. debt. It implies a temporary status, a placeholder role, yet he is currently sitting in the Oval Office signing executive orders that carry the full weight of federal law. You might be thinking that this is just political theater in Washington that does not affect you in your town or your city. You might think that as long as the factories are running and the shops are open, it does not matter who sits in the chair. But I need you to understand that certainty is the currency of capitalism. The entire global financial system rests on the assumption that the United States government is a stable, predictable entity. When that stability is thrown into question, when there are effectively two claimants to the presidency, one in the White House and one in a hospital bed, the risk premium on everything goes up. Investors pull back. Corporations freeze hiring because they do not know what the regulatory environment will look like tomorrow. That hesitation trickles down directly to you. It affects whether your boss approves that overtime you need. It affects whether the bank approves your mortgage application. It affects the interest rate on your credit card debt. The narrative being spun by legal experts about a soft coup is dangerous because it undermines the very legitimacy of the state institutions that process your tax returns and fund your local schools. If half the country believes the acting president is an usurper and the other half believes the hospital-bound president is incapacitated, We enter a crisis of legitimacy that money cannot fix. The cabinet claims they acted to keep the government running. They argue that in a moment of medical emergency, the chain of command cannot be broken. There is a logic to this. The machinery of the state, from the military to the treasury, requires a singular executive. Orders must be given. Documents must be signed. The state cannot simply pause because an individual has collapsed. But the counter-narrative from Trump's team, framing this as a betrayal of the highest order, injects a poison into the system that makes governance nearly impossible. When we look at the history of how we got here, we see a gradual erosion of norms and an increasing reliance on brinkmanship. We have normalized the idea that political power is about personal loyalty rather than institutional duty. This event is the culmination of years of treating the government not as a public trust, but as a prize to be seized. And now that the seizure has happened from within, by the vice president himself, the veil has been torn away. We are seeing the raw mechanics of power. The staffer telling Trump he no longer has clearance is not just a dramatic moment. It is a demonstration of where power actually resides. It resides in the bureaucracy, in the protocols, and in the official designation of authority. It does not reside in the person, but in the office. Trump the man is in a hospital bed. The presidency, the institution, has moved down the hall to JD Vance. This separation of the man from the office is what I want to explore with you. It is a concept that is crucial to understanding how our economy works. In a functioning capitalist democracy, we rely on institutions being bigger than individuals. The Federal Reserve is supposed to be bigger than the chair. The presidency is supposed to be bigger than the president. But when that distinction collapses, when the person becomes the policy, we enter dangerous territory. The markets react to the man, not the metrics. And right now, the markets are looking at a confused, chaotic picture. We have confirmed reports of the secret swearing in. We know Vance has invoked the 25th, but we also know that Trump is awake, enraged, and technically a private citizen in the eyes of the Secret Service detail guarding his door, yet he retains the loyalty of millions of voters and potentially significant factions within the government itself. Think about the confusion this creates for the federal workforce. If you are a mid-level manager at the Department of Labor or the EPA, whose orders do you follow? The executive orders being signed by Vance in the Oval Office, or the directives that might soon come from a recovering Trump via his social media channels? This paralysis at the top leads to stagnation at the bottom. It means grants do not get approved. It means regulations are put on hold. It means the gears of government grind to a halt. And when the government slows down, the economy slows down. Government spending and activity account for a massive portion of our GDP. A freeze in federal activity is not just a headache for bureaucrats. It is a hit to the construction companies waiting for infrastructure contracts, the healthcare providers waiting for Medicare reimbursements, and the small businesses waiting for loans. I want you to feel the weight of this moment. It is easy to get lost in the sensationalism of the weeping staffer and the hospital drama, but the real impact is happening in the silence of the brave new world we have just entered. We are in uncharted waters. We have never had a situation where a president was removed via the 25th Amendment against his will while he was arguably recovering. The constitutional crisis we are facing is also an economic crisis, and it is one that will likely reshape the distribution of wealth and power in this country for years to come. In the next part of this analysis, we are going to look specifically at the financial incentives behind this move and who stands to gain the most from a Vance presidency that begins in the shadows. We promise to look at the money, so let us follow it. When you strip away the political drama of secret ceremonies and hospital confrontations, what you are left with is a transaction, a very hostile, very high-stakes transaction. Think of the United States government not as a democracy for a moment, but as a distressed corporation. The shareholders are the voters, but the board of directors, the cabinet, the donors, the institutional power brokers have decided that the CEO is a liability. In the corporate world, when a CEO becomes erratic or physically unable to lead, the board moves swiftly to replace him to protect the stock price. That is effectively what we just witnessed. The cabinet did not just invoke the 25th Amendment to preserve the chain of command, they did it to preserve the stability of the asset, and the asset is the American economy. You have to understand that for the last few months, the markets have been jittery. The volatility index was creeping up. Major banks were quietly hedging their bets against a total collapse of executive function. Donald Trump, for all his populist appeal, represents pure, unadulterated volatility to the bond markets. He is unpredictable. He threatens tariffs one day and demands lower interest rates the next. To a global financial system that runs on algorithms and quarter-point interest rate adjustments, he is a wrench in the gears. JD Vance, on the other hand, despite his populist rhetoric, is a creature of systems. He understands venture capital. He speaks the language of the donor class. He is viewed, correctly or incorrectly, as a man who can be managed, or at least one who understands the rules of the game better than the man he just replaced. So when you see the headlines about a soft coup, I want you to translate that into economic terms. This was a risk management strategy executed by the state. The weeping staffer at Walter Reed was the emotional fallout, but the signature on the executive order in the Oval Office was the cold, hard calculation of capital preservation. But here is where it gets dangerous for you. When the government prioritizes market stability over democratic legitimacy, it creates a bubble, a political bubble. You might see the stock market rally tomorrow because Wall Street loves the idea of a stable, functional executive branch that is not tweeting threats at 3 a.m. Your 401k might tick up. The pundits on financial news channels will tell you that the transition was seamless and that the adult is in the room. But this stability is artificial. It is bought on credit. By severing the link between the elected president and the office of the presidency, the cabinet has introduced a structural flaw into the foundation of our society. They have told you that your vote is secondary to the continuity of government operations. And while the markets might cheer today, the long-term cost of that is a loss of trust that no amount of stimulus can fix. If half the country believes the system is rigged, they stop participating. They stop paying taxes with the same compliance. They stop trusting the dollar. They move into the gray market. We saw this in failing economies throughout the 20th century. When legitimacy dies, the formal economy begins to shrink and the shadow economy takes over. Let us talk about what this means for your daily expenses. The immediate reaction to political instability is often a flight to safety. Usually that means investors buy U.S. treasuries, driving interest rates down. But this is different. This crisis is internal. It strikes at the validity of the Constitution itself. If the world loses faith in the rule of law in America, if they see us as a banana republic where leaders are swapped out in secret hospital coups, they stop buying our debt. And when they stop buying our debt, interest rates skyrocket. That means your mortgage rate jumps. That means the cost of financing a car doubles. That means the federal government has to print trillions just to pay the interest on the national debt, leading to inflation that eats away at your paycheck faster than you can earn it. The acting president is now sitting in the Oval Office, likely surrounded by the very people who orchestrated this move. He is indebted to them. His power does not come from the ballot box anymore. It comes from the consensus of the cabinet. This changes who he answers to. A president elected by the people has a mandate to serve the people, however imperfectly he interprets that. An acting president installed by the cabinet has a mandate to serve the cabinet and the interests they represent. This is a crucial shift in the incentive structure of the executive branch. You are going to see policies shift rapidly in the coming days. You are going to see a move away from the chaotic populism of the Trump agenda toward a more streamlined, corporate-friendly stability. They will call it restoring order. They will say it is necessary to calm the markets, but you should read it as a consolidation of power by the administrative state. This is the machinery of the establishment protecting itself. It is not necessarily a conspiracy of evil men in a smoke-filled room. It is the natural immune response of a massive entrenched bureaucracy facing a chaotic pathogen. Trump was the pathogen. Vance is the antibody, but the treatment might be worse than the disease. By bypassing the voters and the president himself, they have set a precedent that any president can be removed if he becomes inconvenient enough, provided you have a medical excuse and a willing vice president. This weaponizes the 25th Amendment in a way the framers never intended. It turns a medical safety valve into a political eject button. Now, consider the position of Donald Trump in that hospital bed. He is stripped of his title, but he is not stripped of his influence. He is now the ultimate outsider. The narrative of betrayal is powerful currency in politics. He will use it. And this creates a dual power structure. You have the official power in the West Wing, holding the seal and the pen, and you have the populist power in the hospital room, holding the hearts of the base and the attention of the media. This is a recipe for paralysis. We talked earlier about how uncertainty freezes the economy. Well, this is not just uncertainty, this is open conflict. We are looking at a potential legal battle that will drag on for months, maybe years. The Supreme Court will be dragged into it. Every decision Vance makes will be challenged in court by Trump's legal team. Every executive order will be slapped with an injunction. This gridlock means that for the foreseeable future, the government is effectively broken. No new laws will pass. No major budgets will be agreed upon. We will be running on autopilot. And while libertarians might cheer for a government that does nothing in a modern, interconnected economy, paralysis is deadly. We need trade deals signed. We need infrastructure funds released. We need disaster relief coordinated. If the person at the top is fighting for his political life against the person who is supposed to be his deputy, none of that happens. The gears rust, the machine seizes up, and you are the one left waiting for the service that never comes. In the next part of this analysis, we are going to examine the specific legal mechanism, the 25th Amendment itself, and how its vague language allowed this boardroom coup to happen. We will look at the text, the loopholes, and why the founders left a backdoor open that is now being kicked in by political opportunism. We will also discuss why the definition of incapacitated is the most expensive word in the English language right now. We ended the last segment by mentioning the fine print, so let us pull up the contract. When you sign a mortgage or a car lease, you know that the devil is in the details. The default clauses, the penalties, the conditions under which the bank can take your property. The Constitution is the contract that binds the government to the people. And right now, the cabinet is exploiting a clause that has been gathering dust since 1967. We are talking about Section 4 of the 25th Amendment. Most Americans assume this amendment is a clear-cut medical protocol. If the president is in a coma, the vice president steps in. Simple, efficient, but the text does not say coma. It does not say unconscious. It says unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. That word, unable, is doing a frightening amount of heavy lifting right now. It is legally ambiguous. It is subjective. And because it is subjective, it is political. Who decides what unable means? The doctors? No. The text gives that power to the vice president and a majority of the principal officers of the executive departments, the cabinet. These are political appointees. They are not medical professionals. They are department heads. By invoking this section, while Trump was arguably recovering, they have effectively transformed themselves from administrators into a shadow electorate. They have decided that unable includes a president who is erratic, enraged, or perhaps just politically inconvenient to the stability of the state. This is where the mechanics of this soft coup become truly fascinating and truly terrifying. We are witnessing the weaponization of ambiguity. In the corporate world, we call this a hostile takeover via a technicality in the bylaws. The board, the cabinet, has decided the CEO is hurting the brand, so they are using a vague clause to oust him. But unlike a corporation, where the worst that happens is a golden parachute and a new CEO, here the stakes are the command of the military and the direction of the world's largest economy. The cabinet has essentially declared that their judgment supersedes the election results. They are betting that the courts will not want to intervene in a political question and that Congress will be too gridlocked to stop them. But here's the trap door that the founders built into this amendment, and it is one that ensures the chaos is only just beginning. The moment Donald Trump woke up and realized what had happened, His legal team would have prepared a written declaration stating that no inability exists. The Constitution allows for this. It gives the president the right to challenge his removal. Once he transmits that declaration to the leaders of Congress, his powers are supposed to be restored. Supposed to be. Unless, and this is the critical unless, the vice president and the cabinet send another declaration within 4 days saying, no, he is still unable. We are currently living inside that 4-day window. It is a constitutional no man's land. We have a president asserting his fitness and a vice president asserting his authority. If they disagree, the decision gets kicked to Congress, which then has to vote by a 2/3 majority to keep the president out of power. Do you see the gridlock this creates? We are looking at a potential 21-day period where Congress debates who the president is while the markets watch in horror. Imagine trying to run a business when you do not know who is authorized to sign the checks or enforce the contracts. Now multiply that by a $27 trillion economy. This legal gray zone is toxic to investment. Uncertainty is one thing. A complete breakdown of the chain of command is another. I want you to think about what this does to the global perception of the US dollar. The dollar is the world's reserve currency because it is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. That faith is based on the idea that our government is stable and our transfer of power is peaceful. Right now, we are failing both tests. If international creditors decide that the U.S. is no longer a safe haven, if they see us devolving into a factional struggle over the Oval Office, they will dump dollars. The value of your currency will plummet. The cost of imports, fuel, electronics, clothes will spike. This is not just a constitutional crisis, it is an impending currency crisis. Furthermore, this situation exposes a structural flaw in modern capitalism's reliance on the state. Markets love deregulation, but they love stability more. They need to know that the state can enforce property rights and maintain order. By shattering the norms of succession, the cabinet has signaled that the rules are fluid. If the highest law in the land can be bent for political expediency, what stops the government from bending the rules on your property rights? What stops them from changing the terms of your government bonds? When the rule of law at the top becomes a matter of interpretation, the rule of law at the bottom, where you and I live, becomes precarious. You might be asking, why did they do it this way? Why not just wait? The answer brings us back to the systemic pressure we discussed earlier. The establishment, the permanent political class, the donors, the defense contractors, likely saw a second Trump term, especially one fueled by vengeance after a medical scare, as an existential threat to the system itself. They chose the chaos of the 25th Amendment over the chaos of an unleashed Trump. It was a calculated gamble. They are banking on the idea that once Vance is in the seat, the inertia of the presidency will keep him there. Power is sticky. Once you hold the pen, it is very hard to take it away. But they forgot one thing, the people. The Constitution is not just a legal document, it is a social contract. It relies on the consent of the governed. By removing a president in this manner, they have broken that contract with the tens of millions of people who voted for him. This creates a disconnect between the legal state, Vance and the cabinet, and the political nation, the voters. A government that is legal but not legitimate is a fragile thing. It requires force to maintain its position. You are likely to see an increase in the militarization of domestic politics as the acting president tries to assert authority over a population that feels disenfranchised. In the next part, we are going to walk through the immediate fallout for the federal bureaucracy and the economy. We will discuss how this dual presidency impacts everything from your tax return to the price of oil, and how the different factions within the government are already starting to choose sides in a civil war of paperwork and red tape. We will see who stands to profit from this confusion and why the smart money is already moving into assets that you probably don't own.